Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. My name is Jim Riley. I'll be your host this evening. Today we're going to talk about the Childcare Assistant Program here in Rhode Island and the important role that it plays in the lives of children and families and recent suggestions that have been made to improve the program. My guests today are Rachel Flum from the Economic Progress Institute, the Executive Director, and Shannon Carroll from the Genesis Center. On behalf of all the folks that are watching today and myself, first of all, I want to thank you both for the great work that you do. You're a couple of really smart, sophisticated ladies who probably could have gone out and made a fortune in the private sector. Instead, you're working for these nonprofits that do just such great work. Rachel, tell us about just quickly what you do over at the Economic Progress Institute.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for having me here today, Jim.
Sure.
We at the Economic Progress Institute have a mission of improving economic security for all Rhode Islanders, and we do that both by producing research and analysis on a number of different topics. So we look at the state budget, we looked at federal priorities, and then we create a legislative platform to work to improve programs for low and moderate income Rhode Islanders.
Great work. And what about the fabulous Genesis Center?
Well, again, thank you for having us.
We're happy to be here.
Genesis Center is a community-based organization. We've been around since 1982. The genesis of Genesis was to serve Southeast Asian refugees and to teach them English while also taking care of their children in a child care center. Now, 35 years later, we have expanded to not only offer English to speakers of other languages, and we're not really with the Southeast Asian community so much anymore because demographics have shifted and we serve a primarily Latino population, but we still teach English. We have a very robust workforce development program that focuses on healthcare and culinary arts, and instead of just a learning center, we have an early childhood education center.
Fantastic. So let's start by talking about the role that childcare plays in the lives of working families, in the future successes of children and the state's economy. So Rachel, let's start with you. Can you tell us about the need for childcare for working families, businesses, and the state?
Sure. So, we know that Rhode Island families need childcare because we know that about 3/4 of children under the age of 6 have both of their parents in the workforce, which means that they need somewhere to go while their parents are working. So we know those parents need childcare assistance, and we also know that childcare can take up almost 1/3 of a family's budget, especially a low-income family's budget. Often one fact that we throw out is that childcare costs can be higher than tuition at a public college or university. So it is a significant portion of families' budgets, but we know they need someplace for their children to go. It's not easy to bring your 2-year-old to work with you. We also know that Rhode Island businesses need their employers to be productive.
Sure.
So they need workers who know that their kids are in safe learning environments so that they can focus on whatever their job is at the time. And then we know that the child care industry provides an important sector of the Rhode Island economy. It employs people, it buys goods and services, and it also really educates the workforce of tomorrow. So we really think of child care as a policy that affects both our current children and then the future workforce. And so it's really an important conversation to have.
Terrific. So Shannon, in your role at the Genesis Center, you work directly with the children and have seen the important role that child care plays in their later success. Can you speak a little bit about that, this sort of head start that the kids get at these centers?
Absolutely. So, I think there's been a lot of emphasis on 3rd grade reading levels, and we're doing a lot of work to get kids to improve in the K-12 system, and sometimes I don't think the importance of that 0 to 5 age range is really focused on. But there's so much evidence, there's so much research that says a child's brain is going through so much rapid development in those stages. And I would even like to say from 0 to 3 years old. So we serve infants and toddlers, and sometimes people think, oh, well, you just have to go in and watch the baby and take care of the baby. But that's not accurate. There's so much learning. Think about how much you learned as a child and how your brain is a sponge. And so what we see in our learning center, and this is particularly with low-income families too, where they're both parents working and there's not quality childcare. If a child is in a quality, consistent early learning center, they're getting exposed to all the things like the words that someone needs to develop vocabulary, the social and emotional learning that happens, and all of this sets the foundation for, number one, success when they transition to kindergarten and then later in life. So, and at Genesis Center, we focus on a whole family approach. We have adult education and early learning in one building. And so we know that the parent's level of education can also impact how the child is learning. And so what we like about our model is that whole family approach. The mother, for example, may be taking an English class or a workforce training class in our building and working to study and setting a good example, becoming a role model, valuing education and fostering the idea that learning is very important. And so we see it make a difference.
That's terrific. Rachel, you mentioned the extraordinary cost of childcare, which is real hardship for many low-wage working parents. As you both know well, the Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, in Rhode Island was created to help low-income households pay for the cost of the health care so that they can work and know that their children are being well cared for in a regulated setting, whether there is a center or whether it's a family home or work provider. So this is an important program, not only because it helps working families afford quality health care, but also because it serves as an important piece of the early learning framework that our youngsters need so desperately. So Rachel, can you start by telling us a little bit more about the state's Child Care Assistance Program and how your organization, EPI, Economic Progress Institute, works to improve the program?
Sure, absolutely. So Rhode Island, as in every state in the country, receives federal funds to have a child care assistance program. Here we call it CCAP. And the genesis for our Rhode Island program really began about 20 years ago at the same time as welfare reform, and the state really looked to create a program that provided that both helped welfare women who were coming off welfare to have a job that they could start, but also to create a program that allowed women who were going to work more and more often to have access to affordable childcare. And so now the program provides a subsidy for about 9,000 children whose families are earning below 185% of poverty, which is about $36,000 a year for a family of three.
Yep.
The parents need to be working 20 hours a week in order to access assistance, and the child care assistance is only for the time when the parents are working. So it's, as I'm sure Shannon will talk about, that means that it's difficult for families who want to also go to college or do extra training on top of working, because the child care program is really tied directly to working. And the families do pay a co-payment amount between $8 and $124 a week. So it's not a completely free program. What we're really seeing is that there's a crisis in the program right now because the state has not kept up their reimbursement rates. So the state pays the child care providers a certain amount to provide the care for these children. And while it used to keep pace with the market rate, so how much private pay parents are paying, we are now seeing the rates are so far below market rate that for some infant care, they're paying about 11% of the market rate. And so logically, some providers are starting to stop engage with this program, and we're concerned about that for the accessibility for families.
So Shannon, this crisis we have now with the underfunding of this extremely important program, the impact of that underfunding for child care assistance is not only felt by the families receiving subsidies, but also the child care centers and the family homes that provide the care.
As Rachel said, we are encountering a crisis in our industry right now. And, you know, although Genesis Center is a not-for-profit, we're still running like a small business. We need to have money come in so we can pay our expenses and pay our salaries. And we're not looking to make a profit, but we need to cover our expenses. And with the population we have, most of them are receiving subsidies. And so it's a set rate. And, you know, I talk to friends about this sometimes and they're like, well, it's still, you know, you're getting, you know, $208 per month or per week for an infant, so that doesn't cover the cost if you have all these kids. It doesn't. There are so many expenses that go into running a child care center. There are ratios we need to maintain. There are environmental regulations. It takes a lot to keep the facility up to code. So there is so much that goes into it. And if we did not have private donations, if we weren't looking for funding in other places, we would not be able to function. And in fact, this year, we did hit a critical point where we had to close one classroom. We have 4 classrooms, and we had to close one of them so we could figure out how can we move forward and maintain this center in a cost-effective way.
I understand there are efforts to overcome that gap in the loss of that revenue. So, Rachel, can you talk briefly about some bills that are coming up that hopefully will bridge that gap?
Yes, so first of all, we're very pleased that the governor, in her Article 15 of the budget, the proposed budget, put in about $1.5 million to support a tiered quality rates program for infants and toddlers. So trying to really address this based on paying families, providers more based on the higher quality their program is. So that's great news, and that's a great first step. We also have Representative Diaz and Senator Crowley have legislation in that would increase the base rates for all providers and then tier them based on quality. So the higher your quality, the more reimbursement rate you get to, so that we have the top quality programs getting at that market rate. And so we would invite people to come engage with us with this. So there's going to be an event at the State House on Wednesday the 28th at 3 o'clock. We'll have families and the sponsors of the legislation speaking, and then go talk to legislators around childcare and why it's important, because we know that everybody has a childcare story, everybody with kids or grandparents and their family. Incredibly
important. And it's that head start that gives these, and the folks that work at these centers, I mean, God bless them. They don't make a lot of money.
That's right.
But they're committed to the children, and I think they do a great job. I know that my office over at Local 328, when I was there years ago, we had a child care center next door. We used to bring over extra toys and things that we collected for Christmas for our members. And it was just a delight to be in there and talk to the workers there and see the kind of work they do and what the kids get out of it. It's terrific. So where do you see us going forward? Are we going to be okay? Are we going to get out of this mess and fix this thing up so that we can afford to continue to give the good care that we give to the folks?
We hope so. I mean, I think there's a national conversation going on around this right now, and we hope that Rhode Island will invest in our youngest children and move our economy forward. That's terrific.
Well, I want to thank you again for the great work that you guys do, both at the Genesis Center and at the Economic Progress Institute. And looking forward to having you on again very soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
All the best. And we'll see you next time on Labor Vision. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Jim Riley. I'll be your host tonight. I've got 2 great guests here tonight from Teamsters Local 251, Matt Taibi, Secretary Treasurer, and Mike Simone, Organizing Director. We're going to talk about organizing, Mike. You know, I love organizing. My entire career as an official in the labor movement for many years, I was on the international staff, traveling around the country, doing nothing but organizing. And when I came to Local 328 in Rhode Island in '97, I was the organizing director and spent an awful lot of time organizing. It is, quite simply, and everybody who knows who's done it, the most rewarding part of the life and the work that we do. Absolutely. Nothing is more rewarding, and nothing is more important. And I know a lot about organizing, and I know that your local union, for instance, right now, you're ratifying, you just ratified a new contract for an organization that recently organized. You're involved in negotiations for a new group that you organize, and you've got an organizing win that you just had, and you're involved in activities. So, in short, Teamsters Local 251 is an organizing local, and congratulations for that. You do a great job. So tell us, Michael, about the busy on the campaigns you've had, the contract that you recently ratified, and let's go back. Let's go from the last thing that happened and back, and we'll finish with your recent organizing win and campaign.
Okay. Well, we can talk about a subcontractor called DHL NH LLC, and Matt and the local are in negotiations right now with that company. They're a subcontractor for DHL, located in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Was this an election, an LRB election?
Yes, we won an election there for 30 drivers, couriers, and 1 dock worker. And the vote was, I think, 27-3. And
that's going to help you in negotiations. They know the people are serious.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And we've had a job action there that resulted in some bonuses and raises for the employees, even though we do not have a contract yet. We also have union access without having a signed contract yet, which is big. We've had 25 ULPs settled against the company. We had a terminated employee during the organizing drive that's back to work with all back pay. That was a difficult one. They gave us a hard time. They hired a union buster, as you know, and he wasn't too successful. So we're in negotiations right now, and Matt could probably talk a little bit about that, we're very close to getting a contract with them. We basically have economics left, I think, with that contract.
Mike, in regard to the management consultant that you said he wasn't very good at what he did, well, he was probably very good at what he did, but you worked harder and you worked better, and you had the people, you educated the members, and you brought them to the dance.
Right.
You took them home.
Education.
It's a reflection on the work that you guys did. He was probably pretty damn good at what he did. Carry on, my friend.
Well, that's DHL NHLLC, and we just ratified a contract with Construct Oil in East Providence, Rhode Island. We had an election there for 7 delivery drivers, on-site fuel delivery drivers. They are actually the first, they will be now, or they are now, the first exclusive on-site fuel delivery company that's now union, Teamsters Local 251. They ratified their contract, so those 7 drivers are now a part of our local. Roger Williams Medical Center, Prospect Childcare, that was a difficult one too. 22 skilled maintenance employees voted to join the union. That was also a 17-4 or 17-3 with 1 challenge ballot.
Excellent.
We have a contract that is being signed right now. It took a year to get a contract, tough negotiations. ULPs filed in that case too. Raises that weren't given that were promised, surveillance, unlawful surveillance. But like I said, we've been successful in securing a contract there also. The local just recently won an election at the airport for standard parking employees, a subcontractor. That was 18-0, the vote count, and that includes shuttle drivers at the airport and maintenance workers. And we're in the process right now of speaking with the company, and hopefully we'll be sitting down for negotiations with standard parking. We also have February 28th, we have another election coming up at the airport for 32 cashiers that also work for standard parking, and I feel very confident that we're going to win that election. So we've been quite busy. We also have an election coming up March 1st for 3 DHL employees that work in the facility where the subcontractor is located. DHL NHLLC, they're operations agents. They actually work for DHL, but they're located in that same facility. So that election will be taking place March 1st.
Wow.
So yeah, that's
Matt, they're keeping you busy. You're also keeping your excellent counsel, Mark Gursky, who also does work with the local union where I used to work at Local 328. He's always done a great job, especially at union hearings. It's just a blast to be with him at a union hearing. And it doesn't hurt to have that warhorse Paul McDonald, your legislative director, helping you not only with your legislative and lobbying stuff, but also getting involved in organizing campaigns. I know over at Roger Williams, he was very helpful, and standard parking as well. So these guys are really working hard, bringing in a lot of new members. You know, we all know, all of us that have done organizing, we all know the difficulties that are involved in it. You talked about the management consultants. You know, the members are scared, and the company doesn't play by the rules, and that makes it very, very difficult to take people. But if you work hard, you do the right education, you inoculate the workers beforehand, you make sure you do those home calls, you make sure you have those meetings, and generally we can beat these folks. But what have you seen? What do you think is the most difficult part of organizing?
Well, the most difficult part of organizing is what you just mentioned, dealing with the anti-union consultants that the companies bring in, and you know, they hold captive audience meetings with the employees, you know, sometimes up to twice a day. They have access to those employees. Naturally, the union can't go on the property, so we have to, you know, when those anti-union consultants put out a leaflet or, you know, make a statement, we have to right away come back, you know, and educate the workers there on, you know, what they're saying is not exactly true. So basically, be truthful with the employees, and I found that once the employees catch these anti-union consultants lying, you know, a few times, then it basically nullifies the anti-union consultant. So it's educating the employees, you know, proving that this person isn't telling them the truth, and that's probably the most difficult part of organizing, I think, is dealing with the anti-union consultants. And one I didn't mention is Pinnacle Logistics, where we started an organizing drive there. They're a subcontractor for Amazon, and they're located in North Kingston, Rhode Island, in Quonset Point, the old Lowe's building. The first thing that company did was fire 3 drivers, which makes it very difficult to organize. As you know, once somebody is terminated, now the other employees are afraid to you know, attend the union meeting or even speak with an organizer or
so you
or
file
somebody from the union.
charges, you get their jobs back, you know, 4 or 5 months later. But meanwhile, your campaign has been diffused, and now you've got. There's a couple of things about that. First of all, it takes the wind out of your campaign.
Right.
But secondly, when those employees come back and they get their full back pay, that can also. I've had several campaigns. I'm sure you have too, where I've won on the third election.
Right.
Well, you know, one election you lose, second election you lose, and I think the reason is because those employees have been to the dance already. They understand what the process is. They know that the company lies. They know that the process for which you get the election process is safe, and nobody knows how you vote. And I think you've got to, as that group gets more educated, I think it's a little more easier for them to organize. Lots of problems trying to get, there's a lot of folks organizing. You get out there, you get the folks organized, you win the election, you get the card, whatever it is, and then you've got a tough road to haul to get the contract. And I know we had the Employee Free Choice Act. It was put in about 3 times, and it never went anywhere. I think that it was a little more stringent than it could have been. If we had only, the 3 parts of that was that one was the card check majority, number 2 was making the fines higher for committing unfair labor practices, and number 3 was a smoother road to a contract by utilizing mediation and arbitration and forcing by, they said 60 days. I would say make it 90 days. I think 90 days makes more sense, and have mediation and arbitration to decide what the contract is going to be. I know there are local unions out there that have had organizing campaigns, and it's 1.5 years, 2 years later, and they still don't have a contract, and they're actively organizing. Matt, you've got a great organizing department. How do you feel about what's going on and where you see yourself moving in the future? And I know you're very happy with your department, but talk to us a little bit about organizing at Local 251.
So there's an old...
I know it's a priority for you.
It is. There's an old Teamsters saying where every member an organizer. So, part of the success, a big part of the success of the local is to say that every member needs to be an organizer in a sense to help out, to get leads, and to be there for the local when called upon. And also, we're Teamsters are in a lot of ways we're delivery drivers, truck drivers. So we see our members see people out on the road. They see people on the docks. They see people where they are, and it's all about talking and communicating and getting the word out that the union is here and will back workers up, and it's all about you as workers collectively. So that's part of the culture that we've reinstilled, so to speak. So that's a big thing. We take lead seriously. We take organizing drive seriously, and we don't win every drive. Certainly, Mike wins a lot, most of them, almost all of them. But getting that first contract, that's definitely always a big challenge.
Right.
Mike mentioned DHL-NH. We've been in negotiations since August. That election took place in June. They delayed. That's when a lot of the unfair labor practice charges piled up, and we've made a lot of progress. We're hoping to get something done next month, and that would make the first contract. Hopefully. So that's the big part of it, is following through and making that happen. Ratifying Construct Oil unanimously was a big deal. They're a division of Taylor Oil, which is union in a lot of places. So that makes it easier when you work with other locals to know the landscape. There's Roger Williams Medical Center, skilled maintenance. The company tried to, for-profit healthcare, they tried to wait it out, delay. There was a couple of unfair labor practice charges that had a lot of teeth to them, and finally the company relented after we actually continued the organizing drive. That's a big part of getting the first contract, is actually seeing it as part of the organizing drive.
Oh yeah, sometimes you have to get creative away from the table
Right.
to get the company's attention.
We had to reaffirm with a petition by the skilled maintenance employees after 1 year of negotiating, we had them sign a petition stating that they still support the union, that they're not going to back down from trying to get a contract. So I think the company got the message that there wouldn't be a decertification there, and that the employees were still behind our local and still willing to fight for a contract. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't win all of my elections either, but there's nothing like it for an organizer to be involved in a very passionate organizing campaign, and then to be there when the ballots are being pulled out of the box, and you see the yes pile and the no pile, and you have the members with you at the time. There is no feeling like that. And I want to thank you for being a great organizer and working hard. And you, Matt, and it's great having you on the show today. Thank you for watching this edition of Labor Vision. We find out about a great organizing local, Teamsters Local 251.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.